me start over. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Corey Contreras. Thank you for joining us today. Start off, I'm going to go over what to expect with the USAID presentation. Before I introduce the rest of the panel, USAID, we're doing 20-minute presentations and leaving about 25 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat. Our colleague Hillary Collins is going to be taking those questions and putting them into a document for us to answer at the end of the presentation. Our presentations will be at 1 o'clock, 1:45, 2:30, and 3:15. The presentation by 4 p.m. should be squared away. So the 3:15 one should be pretty good if you miss anything from this one. And again, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to put them in the chat and we will try to get them answered at the end of this presentation. So I want to take some time to introduce the rest of the panel. My name is Corey Contreras. I am the Division Chief for the Civil Service Staffing Division. We maintain the hiring for all GS general schedule positions within USAID from GS1 to GS15. Helping me out today with the presentation, we also have my colleague Christina Pakunis, who is an HR advisor within the Civil Service Staffing Division. And then we also have Wangoi Gyundi, who is the president of the Military Spouse ERG at USAID, who will be providing some detail about the ERG and ways to participate in USAID's Military Spouse ERG. Start us off, give you a little background about the U.S. Agency for International Development. USAID, on behalf of the United States, leads international development and humanitarian efforts to save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people progress beyond assistance. Our work directly advances U.S. foreign policy objectives, and our mission directly motivates our employees to participate on a daily basis. We've taken multiple employee engagement surveys, and one thing that always stands out with our employees at USAID, we are highly motivated by the work that this agency does, and we want to participate in making that the world and this agency successful on a daily basis. To go into a little bit more detail about the type of work we do at USAID. Most of our work revolves around different projects and programs we operate overseas. One of them being education. We manage education programs and projects overseas, working with partners within developing countries, develop education programs. We also work within the agricultural and food security field, economic growth and trade, crisis, conflict, and stability, global health, democracy, human rights and governance, humanitarian assistance and disaster mitigation, environment and resiliency as well. All of our projects and programs are in developing countries or even conflict countries where our employees are placed in potential risky environments where they have to deal and help people develop their countries overseas. So the people within this agency are highly motivated by the work that this agency does, and they do take a lot of risk within the developing countries in helping the agency carry out its mission. One of the 5 of the key factors within the agency that our agency leadership is focused on today are developed around the Global Development Partnership Initiative outlined by Administrator Power, which surrounds global health, working to prep for future pandemics and helping the world deal with pandemics throughout. Also, humanitarian assistance. There have been a lot of natural disasters and other things that have caused the need for more humanitarian assistance efforts. So the agency is working to build that capability and sustain our projects that we work on overseas. Also, democracy and human rights and governance is another key area that the agency is focusing on developing in the future, as the democracy has slowly taken a hit over the years with autocrats and other people taking the lead. And so we're trying to develop more of those projects and programs overseas to help expand democracy overseas. And the final one is around environmental and climate, to make sure that we can sustain environmental and climate projects and help countries overseas develop that capacity as well. These are the projects and programs that USAID focuses on overseas. We can go into the next slide. USAID is a part of the 3 Ds of national security. There's diplomacy, which is led by the Department of State, which handles the agreements between different countries. There's the development portion, which USAID is a large proponent of, working to develop economic prosperity, demonstrate American generosity, and promoting a path to the recipient self-reliance and resilience for developing countries. And then there's also the defense, which is mainly handled by the Department of Defense, which provides the military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security. And that's the 3 Ds, which the Agency for International Development plays a key role within the national security strategy for the United States. Next, we're going to go over some key occupations that USAID hires for within the civil service realm of USAID. And to take us through the next couple of slides, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Christina Pacunas, to assist us.
Thank you, Corey. So here we are showing the most commonly filled general schedule positions within USAID. You'll see a mix of professional and scientific positions, as well as administrative and management positions listed here. So the ones listed at the top with the asterisks, these are the technical and professional and scientific positions. For these positions, when it comes to qualifying for them, you will most likely need to ensure you're uploading transcripts or certification so that we can verify that you meet the individual occupational requirements that are required based on the series that we have listed next to the title of the position. And then the positions where it starts with administrative officer and below, these are our more administrative and management positions. All of these positions are typically recruited at the GS-12 level and above. This would mean that you would need to qualify based on 1 year of specialized experience, as opposed to substituting your specialized experience for education. When it comes to applying to our jobs, all of them are listed on USA Jobs. This slide includes links directly to USA Jobs career pages and the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. The positions that you'll find on USA Jobs are in the general schedule, as well as in the Foreign Service. Our Foreign Service positions are in the accepted service, and most of the Foreign Service positions are in the missions abroad. However, we do have a lot of domestic Foreign Service positions as well. And then we also have positions listed in our USAID's career pages. In addition to our general schedule positions and our Foreign Service positions, we also have personal service contract positions. These positions are personnel employed by a private company that have employer-employee relationships with the government and the company's employees. These positions are also referred to as PSCs, and these are not federal positions. And then lastly, I want to highlight the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. USAID is a new partner with the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. We are finalizing our agreement before the year is over. So you will be able to access more of our job opportunities through that program as well. So we encourage you to ensure that you have an account set up with them so that you can reach all of our positions. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Wangui.
Hello, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Military Spouses Employees Resource Group that was formed in July 2021. We believe that a military spouse can have a career and be a supporter of their military service member. You can do both. You can balance both. We advocate for recruitment and retention. That means that we want opportunities to grow and we want those barriers to promotion removed. We also want to be included in the inclusion, diversity, DEIA policies. We want to end the chronic unemployment of military spouses. 22% is a very, very high number, and we want that reduced so that we can have strong families. And then we want to make sure that all of this is done without having to separate us from our family, from our military service members. These are our goals, and as our ERG, we welcome you once you get employed. Please learn more about us. We wish you well through the hiring process and look forward to working with you.
All right, thank you, Christina and Wangui. Here's some more information that you guys can use to get in touch with the Military Spouse ERG at USAID. We also have a Veterans Employment Resources contact here for you as well. And then Christina and I's emails are down below. Just in case you have any questions about the hiring process and how it works, Christina and I can provide you some more assistance in going through that process. So we're going to open the floor up to any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. Hillary, do we have anything?
I haven't seen anything come through yet, but please do feel free to drop a question in the chat if you have any.
And you can raise your hand as well if you want to say ask your question out loud. I see a question from Alex that let's see, it says, what advice would you give for people with resume gaps or who have an exceptional family member? For resume gaps, as far as that goes for civil service hiring, we don't hold that against people. What we're more concerned with is looking at prior experience and how that prior experience matches up with the position we're trying to fill. As long as you can, if a hiring manager asks about resume gaps, as long as you can explain why you took time off, it shouldn't be held against you for competing for another position. And what in HR, we're more just concerned about the quality and quantity of work that you did previously to find you minimally qualified for the position. And then we have another question. Christine, I'm going to direct this one to you. Are the jobs just civil service? What about PSCs?
So the jobs are civil service as well as PSCs. And our PSCs, information for that you can find through the link in the presentation to our career pages.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. So Christina, I have one more question for you. Do you have any job openings for green card holders? Is U.S. citizenship required?
U.S. citizenship is required. So there are circumstances where we are allowed to hire those who do not have U.S. citizenship. That's a different process, and it's usually under extenuating circumstances, but for the most part, U.S. citizenship is required.
Thank you. And we do have what we call personal service contracts and institutional support contracts that don't require U.S. citizenship. You can apply to one of those positions and work as a green card holder for USAID. Go to the next question. Will military spouse jobs be mostly remote so that they can continue to work wherever their spouse moves to? I'll take a crack at this one, and Wangui, if you want to take a crack at it as well and add anything, you can do that as well. We do have remote positions. They're not designated necessarily to military spouses, but military spouses are welcome to apply to them. We are working to provide military spouses with more flexibility in hiring in the event that their spouse has to move overseas for a new assignment with the Department of Defense or another agency. So we are working on providing a little bit more flexibility, and you'll see if you look at our USAID Jobs website that there are a few remote opportunities available now for you to consider. And Wangui, did you want to add anything?
We are wanting more flexibilities because we know this is something that is unique to military spouses. We PCS every 3 to 4 years. We do want to be able to to continue our careers. And so, yeah, that's one thing that we are advocating. We are advocating for the domestic employees teleworking overseas flexibilities, so that if you have to go abroad, we don't want family separation and we want the career. So stay tuned. There is people in Congress, people in other branches of the government are working on this issue. But I foresee good things ahead. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. So another question, in the past I've seen jobs in Africa. I live in Japan and I'm willing to travel. Is this a possibility? With our foreign service, it is a possibility. We do offer opportunities for personal service contracts and other hiring mechanisms that do allow for people to work in countries outside of the United States that are not necessarily foreign service career opportunities or foreign service limited appointments. You can find all of those opportunities that are on the USAID career pages, and they're posted almost on a daily basis for missions overseas. And you're welcome to consider them and apply to them. Christina, I'm going to direct this one to you. Can you give us examples of the experience and education of a variety of your employees?
Sure. A lot of the experience we see is in international development and research, policy development, and analysis, management and program analysts, and a lot of administrative, high-level administrative experience.
I also want to say, can I say that in addition to having a international background, you may not necessarily need to have a international background. For example, I don't have an international background. I am a journalist by trade. And so those skills, the logical thinking skills that you have from other disciplines can also apply. So just when you're looking at those postings, think about what else can you add? What are common things that are valuable to any employer?
Thank you, Ongoy. So next question, how does enrollment in the Foreign Service Family Reserve Corps interface with USAID opportunities? Spouse will be stationed at embassies, and I'm looking for a career that can travel with them. I know we have opportunities for eligible family members overseas at our missions, where family members of foreign service officers that travel overseas are able to travel with their spouse and work in various embassies in administrative and support roles to help carry out the mission of USAID. Those opportunities are available. I personally don't know how they, where the opportunities are posted. My best guess would be that to check the USAID career pages as well to see if they're advertised there. Christina or Wango, you guys want to add anything there? I don't know. All right. Are there any other questions?
I haven't seen any others come in, but if anyone has thought of anything, please feel free to drop a question in the chat. We'd be happy to respond.
I see a question from Carolyn McClellan Richards. I believe USAID has fellowships to get your foot in the door. Are there any military spousal preferences for these opportunities? Thank you. We do have fellowships in the civil service and foreign service. The big one in the foreign service is the Payne Fellowship. The foreign service, there's no preference given in their hiring process. All applicants are pretty much considered equal at the point of, after the point of qualifications. As long as a person is found qualified for the position, all applicants are not created, but all applicants are considered equal at that point. And then on the civil service side, there is the Presidential Management Fellowship Program, which is a big one for the civil service. Though that program is mainly managed by OPM. Applicants apply to positions through OPM. OPM does the qualification review and then invites qualified applicants to almost like a career fair where they interact with hiring managers and PMF coordinators, and then hiring managers make selections and offer people positions. Those ones also do not have any preference for military spouses or veterans. All applicants are considered the same at the point of the qualification.
So if I may add something to that, as a military spouse, explain your experience. You have a lot of experiences as you PCS from place to place. You're resilient, in your cover letters and your essays. If you can find a way to explain your situation in those in those essays as you submit to the fellowships and other opportunities, take that, explain that. It might give you a little bit of edge.
Thank you, Ongoy. And that goes for GS positions as well. GS positions, military spouses do have a non-competitive hiring authority. As long as if you are able to compete with federal employees, where a lot of US citizens that aren't military spouses or veterans, they are not able to compete under the same circumstances as military spouses. So it is a bit of a leg up on the GS side. As long as, like Wangoya said, as long as you can explain your experience well, and your resume, we recommend being as detailed as possible. Go into detail of everything that you did for a position. Don't try to limit your resume to a few pages. Each role that you've held in the past, you want to be at least a couple paragraphs so that it goes into detail of what you did. Because on the front end, when we're doing qualification review, we're trying to match up what your experience with the position trying to be filled. So it's important to be as detailed as possible in your resume.
I think also there was somebody in today's earlier session at OPM mentioned about, in your cover letter, and something I learned today. I don't usually mention it in my cover letter, but they suggested that, you mention it there, that you're a military spouse, that whatever resiliency skills you have that would be adaptable to, I'm adding now, to the position, say it there. That way they just aware of who you are. It's just an additional detail that that they could take into consideration.
Yeah, and also for consideration, as we provided the Veterans Employment Resource contact up there as well, it doesn't hurt to contact the Veteran Resource Employment Resource. There's a program manager there to assist, even if it's trying to reach out to current supervisors at USAID to get informational interviews to see what type of work they do on a day-to-day basis and learn more about the projects USAID manages overseas and how we support those projects in Washington, D.C. It doesn't help to try to set up some informational interviews with people at USAID to learn more about the organization and get some experience so that you can improve your resume when you submit them for consideration.
Corey, I have a question. I see Layla's comment here about condensing resumes. And, I always hear, when I first came, I heard, this is not the private sector. Your resumes are actually quite long. Do you want to address that a little bit?
Yeah. So for the federal government is completely different from the private sector. We're more qualitative. We want to see the type of work that you do, and not, a lot of people try to condense it just to their awards or their big achievements in their resume, but we actually want to see almost every task you completed in your job. Like, what's your day-to-day work look like on any given day? So if you're a human resources specialist, going into detail about, hey, I draft vacancy announcements, I post vacancy announcements to USA Jobs, I conduct qualification reviews. Going into detail on that stuff helps us kind of verify that you are qualified for the position that we're trying to fill. And then on the back end, with the hiring manager as well, they want to verify that you can do the position. If you're selected for the position, that they can be confident that on day one, you can come into the position and start doing the work on day one. There might be a little bit of a development gap, maybe 90 days, but they want to be comfortable knowing that you can do the work. And the best way to do that is being as detailed as possible in your resume and kind of demonstrating that you can do the work. And then as you go in for interviews, your interviews is almost an expansion on your resume. kind of verifying that everything you stated in your resume, that you can speak to it, so that hiring managers will again get that reassurance that, hey, this person, they can talk to what they wrote in their resume as well. So I'm confident that if I offer them the job, they'll be able to come in and do it on day one. Christina, you got anything to add to that?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the other question that
Right.
I wanted to go back to had to do with the gap. And I know a lot of us military spouses go to school in the gaps, right? So if I have a gap and I've been going to school, how can have you seen that, and how can I use that to my, how do I explain that? I may not have the experience, but I've been going to school. I went to, I'm working on my master's. We're actually a highly educated group. How do we account for that? Yes, there was a gap in employment, but I did X, Y, and Z in the meantime.
Sure. So the gap, as far as HR is concerned, we are most focused on the types of work experiences that you've held in the past. We don't remove people from consideration because they have gaps in their resume, and we try to be fair and equitable across the board. Best way to explain the gap is during an interview on being able to talk with the hiring manager and explain during this time period, hey, I was raising a family, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we try to do away with that type of bias that says a person can't do a job because they had a gap in their experience. We can't 100% ensure that we can do away with that bias, but we at least want to give you the opportunity to interview for the position if you have the experience, and be able to explain your experience to the hiring manager. And then as well, if you have gaps in your experience, that'll kind of help you explain to the hiring manager verbally on what the gaps were, what the reasons for the gaps. There could be, trying to explain the gap from my vantage point is difficult, because all of our gaps are for different reasons. I've had gaps in my resumes for going to school, and most of the time I just try to stick to my experience and how that relates to the position being filled, so that I can show and demonstrate that I'm the best fit for this position and can come in and do the job on day one. And that's what most hiring managers are concerned with, that the person that they're going to select can do the job on day one. All right, we have a few more minutes in case there's any other questions before we take a break and go to our next prep for our next presentation. Question from Nozomi: do you hire the newly graduated people from master's degree even though they don't have the working experience in the field yet? For example, do you hire a person who just finished the master's degree of data analysis? Yes, we hire people. We actually, in the civil service, we have a program called the Recent Graduate Program, where we hire people at the GS9 grade level that just completed their master's degree. It's usually experience relevant to the type of work, or education relevant to the type of work the position will be doing on a daily basis. So if it's related to project management, like a master's degree in project management or a related field, is usually required. But we do have programs that open up for entry-level positions for people that don't have experience working in the field. And the civil service, we also, any position you see at the GS9 grade level, you can be found qualified for that position solely based on your education level, so your completion of your master's degree. Cool. And we have 2 more minutes for one last question, just in case somebody wants to throw something in there. And thank you all for participating. We'll be here till 4 o'clock. If you want to stop back and see another presentation. Christian, does USAID conduct volunteer opportunities too? Volunteer opportunities, they do have unpaid internships at USAID that they work through kind of private sector organizations to bring people on board. That's the closest we get to like actual volunteer opportunities. But those are available out there. I think if they're posted on our career pages. And then, Ari, is there any online community who are working or willing to work in the international cooperation field? LinkedIn is the best resource for that. There are a ton of USAID employees on LinkedIn, and you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to message me, and I can put you in touch with people that are within the international cooperation field to kind of guide you along the way. Thank you very much for participating. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Our contact information is here, and we're always happy to chat or email and help you out in any way we can.
Hello and welcome, everyone. It's 1:45, but we'll give folks just a couple minutes to hop over from the previous session before we get started. All right, well, I'm seeing 1:47 Eastern time, so we can go ahead and kick off our second session here. Thank you for participating in the Federal Interagency Military Spouses Career Expo. This second session is being hosted by the U.S. Agency for International Development. For this session, your video feed and your microphone have been turned off. Please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to submit questions, comments, or remarks. This session is being recorded, and links to all of today's recordings will be emailed to attendees in the days following this event. A PDF of today's presentation will be dropped in the chat box during the Q&A session for you to download. And once the session has concluded, you will exit this meeting and click on the Zoom link for the next federal agency that you wish to visit this afternoon. If you have any questions or need assistance, you can always click on this morning's general session Zoom link where you first joined us, and help is standing by. So with that, I'm excited to welcome Corey Contreras of the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Thank you, Caitlin, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for showing some interest in careers with USAID. Give you a little breakdown of how this presentation works up front. This is a 20-minute session. We want to save enough time at the end of the presentation for you to ask any questions that you might have. So it usually do about 25 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat on the right. My colleague Hillary Collins, once we get through the presentation, she'll take the lead on presenting or asking the questions to the panel, and then we'll try our best to answer them on the spot. This is our second session. At 1:45, we have two follow-up sessions at 2:30 and 3:15. In case you miss anything and want to repeat, I'm sure by the time 3:15 comes around, this presentation is going to be on point and it's going to be a lot better. So more practice makes perfect. So we'll introduce the panel. First is myself, Corey Contreras. I am the Division Chief for the Civil Service Staffing Division within the Office of Human Capital and Talent Management at the U.S. Agency for International Development. Joining me today is my colleague, Christina Pakunis, who is a Human Resources Advisor within the Civil Service Staffing Division at USAID. And then also we have Wangui Kyundi, who is the President of the Military Spouse ERG at USAID, who will be introducing us more to the ERG, kind of what they stand for, the work that they're doing now to advance military spouses at USAID. and provide more opportunities for military spouses at USAID. So without further ado, we'll go into a little description about USAID. We are an agency that works on behalf of the United States and leading international development and humanitarian assistance efforts to save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people progress beyond assistance. Our work directly advances U.S. foreign policy objectives throughout the globe. Our agency, we are made up of a workforce that is highly committed to the mission of USAID. We are motivated to come and advance the work that USAID does to be able to improve lives overseas. It's a very important mission that USAID carries out, and you can tell just by talking to the people that work at the agency. They love coming to work every day, and they love seeing the good work that USAID does on a daily basis. We'll go into a little bit of more detail about the type of work that USAID does, about the projects that we do manage overseas. USAID works in developing countries and also conflict countries overseas. We don't have the fancy posts that the Department of State does. There aren't a lot of opportunities for USAID employees to go on assignment to Paris or Rome. A lot of our assignments overseas are working in developing countries and helping those countries either improve their education, agriculture and food security. We also have economic growth and trade programs that we operate overseas. We will also, in the conflict countries that we operate, we do manage a lot of programs that work on crisis prevention, conflict, and instability to help countries get through conflict without enhancing the need for war. We also work on a lot of global health projects overseas, and also democracy, human rights, and governance programs. We have humanitarian assistance efforts overseas where in the event of natural disasters, we can go in, help countries kind of repair the damage, get back on their feet, and continue to advance the needs of their people in their country. We also have a lot of projects that deal with environment and resiliency. Our administrator, Samantha Power, she has noted 5 kind of key components of her Global Development Partnership Initiative, which includes humanitarian assistance, being able to ensure that USAID is prepared for future natural disasters, because they don't seem to be going away in the near future. They're going to be more in the future, and we want the USAID workforce to be able to meet the needs of those natural disasters and help people in developing countries. Another key point is the democracy, human rights, and governance. There's a lot of autocrats working throughout the globe that are working to damage democracy and people's rights around the world. It's another pillar within the GDPI that the administrator is focusing on, being able to develop USAID's workforce to meet these demands head on, to be able to advance human rights and democracy around the globe. Another one is the pandemics that have happened over the last couple of years. USAID has been able to kind of meet the needs of the COVID pandemic, but we want to be more prepared in the future to meet those demands and take care of the needs of people in the future. And then the last one is the climate and the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility of USAID, and also the partners that we work in within developing countries. We want to be able to partner with people and put a little bit more power to the people in developing countries to be able to have a say in what those countries need to be able to advance, whether it's democracy, human rights, economic growth, what kind of the programs that would benefit their country, rather than us, USAID, telling them what they need. So it's kind of what the administrator is aiming for in the future, and the work that USAID does in developing countries that helps improve the globe all around. Next up is the USAID's role in national security. USAID plays a key role in national security for the United States. We are considered one of the 3 Ds in national security policy and strategy. The 3 Ds include diplomacy, which is led by the U.S. Department of State. They manage America's relationships with foreign governments, international organizations, and people of other countries. The management of all these relationships is called diplomacy. USAID plays the development role, where the work that we do advances U.S. national security and economic prosperity and demonstrates American generosity and also promotes a path to recipient self-reliance and resilience. And then the final D within the 3 Ds is defense, which is led by the Department of Defense. Its mission is to provide the military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security. So USAID plays a key role in our nation's national security strategy. We are a part of the National Security Council, which is made up of a number of federal agencies that carry out the national security strategy of the President of the United States. And we're one of the major 3 Ds within the national security strategy. We'll move on to our next topic of introducing some commonly filled positions within our civil service, which we call the general schedule positions. And to take the lead on this, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Christina Pacunas, to take us through the list and explain the different opportunities available.
Thank you, Corey. So here we have listed the most commonly filled general schedule positions within USAID. The first 4 positions or 5 positions listed are more of the technical and professional and scientific positions. These positions will usually have a basic requirement or an educational requirement or certification. So when you're applying to these positions, just make sure you're reading the announcement thoroughly to upload any supplemental documents like a transcript or a certification. And then the next several positions listed are our administrative and management type of positions. These don't have any educational requirements or individual occupational requirements. All of the positions listed here are typically recruited at the GS 12 level and above. However, the Human Resource Specialist series and the Administrative Officer series, we do see that come in sometimes at a 9, target 13 or higher. And next, I'm going to talk about some links to other opportunities. So this slide will include links to where you can find all of our jobs that we have listed on USA Jobs. We have the general schedule and foreign service positions listed here. The foreign service positions are in the accepted service. Those assignments you can find those assignments overseas, but there are a lot of domestic assignments as well. And then in addition to general schedule and foreign service, we also have the personnel service contract positions. And these are positions where the personnel, they're employed by a private company, and that company has an employer-employee relationship between the government and the company's employees. The PSC positions are not federal positions. So that's one distinction between the three mechanisms. And then lastly, we wanted to highlight that USAID is coming into partnership with the Military Spouse Employment Partnership Program. This is a program that connects military spouses with federal agencies and private companies who are looking to recruit military spouses specifically. So we are actually finalizing our agreement with them coming up at the end of this month, and you will soon see our positions listed on their site as well. So if you haven't done so, we do encourage you to create an account on the Military Spouse Employment Partnership page. And now I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Mangui, to talk about the Military Spouse ERG.
So the Military Spouses ERG was formed in July 2021. We believe that a military spouse can have a career, a flourishing career at that, and also be a supporter of their family members who are in the military services. We believe that not only should we have hiring events and recruit people, but we should also make efforts to remove barriers to employment and retention, meaning promotional opportunities should be available. And that should be done in a way that keeps the families together without having that family separation, accounting for whatever gaps there may be. So we also want military spouses part of any diversity and inclusion initiatives. We want to be included. We want to be part of any policies that will advance anybody else. We want to be part of that conversations. We also know that military unemployment is very high. Military spouses unemployment is very high at 22%. But we also know that we are very educated as a group, as a cohort, and we're very resilient. So we want to reduce that number so that we have strong families. The other thing we want to be able to do is to go where our families go. We don't want to be separated from our spouses. It's not good for our families. It's not good for our country. And so the ERG is a community of people who support these objectives. So I am so glad that you're here. Thank you for taking the opportunity to come see what USAID can offer you. When you are employed, and you will be, please come and join us and be a part of strengthening our military families. Thank you.
All right, before we go into the Q&A, we just want to fill you in on some of the contact information that we have here to share with you. The first one is the Military Spouse ERG, which Ramgoy just presented on. You can feel free to reach out to the email listed here, the Military Spouse and Family Board ERG at usaid.gov. If you have any questions about the ERG or employment opportunities at USAID, or any questions in general, you can reach out to that contact information. USAID also has a Veterans Employment Resource contact. We have a Veterans Employment Program Manager at USAID that handles the hiring of veterans. They also provide support to military spouses as well. You can contact that individual, the program manager, at the vets@usaid.gov. If you have any questions about the federal hiring process for GS positions, you can reach out to myself. My email is here, and also Christina Pacunas, who's listed at the bottom as well. I'm now going to turn it over to Hillary Collins, who's going to take us through the Q&A. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them the best we can while we still have time before our next presentation. Hillary?
Great, thank you so much, Corey. And again, please do feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat so we can address them here. And perhaps just to kick us off, I could pose a question to the panelists that was raised in our earlier session, which was related to Will military spouse jobs be mostly remote so that they can continue to work wherever their spouses move to? I don't know if that's best for Corey or Christina, perhaps. And Wangui, feel free to weigh in if you have thoughts as well.
Sure, I can take the lead on this one. We do offer remote eligible positions. You can find them advertised on our USAID jobs website for the general schedule positions we were hiring for. There's also the ability to request remote eligibility after you come on board. If you do compete for a non-remote eligible position and come on and are selected and come on board, you can always request it, but it's not guaranteed. So there is the risk that you might have to leave the position, but you can always work with your manager to see if there is any flexibility in the process at all. To see if you can, USAID does want to offer as many opportunities for military spouses to travel with their family. Some positions just require people to be in Washington, D.C., depending on the type of work the person or the position does. So the opportunities are available.
Okay, great. I know another question that was raised previously was whether all the jobs are just for civil service, and then what about PSCs? So if either Christina or Corey doesn't mind providing clarification on that, that would be great.
Great, Hillary, I'll take that one. We do have civil service as well as PSC positions, and we also have the foreign service positions, excuse me. And you can find all of those positions at our link to the career pages that is located in the slide deck that will be provided to you.
Great, thank you, Christina. And again, just a reminder, if you do have any questions on any of the content we covered here, please feel free to drop those in the chat or raise a hand and we'd be happy to respond. In the meantime, perhaps I could just also ask the panelists, I know a question that was raised previously was whether US citizenship is required and whether USAID has any job openings for green card holders.
I can take that one. Most of our GS positions, they are competitive service positions, which does require us to, does require US citizenship. And it's all kind of based on the type of funding we receive from Congress on whether we can offer positions to green card holders or not. We do have other hiring mechanisms that would allow for green card holders to apply and be hired under. One of the main ones being our personal service contracts and also our institutional support contract positions. The personal service contracts, they are contract employees that are hired by USAID. Your employer is USAID. It's just not a federal appointment. The other ones are institutional support contracts, and I think Christina mentioned it earlier. These are private sector organizations that make agreements with USAID to provide a workforce to support USAID and its mission, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or overseas. So those opportunities are available for people. You can always find them on one website we always recommend is the sam.gov website, and they have institutional support contract opportunities posted there, as well as our USAID career pages. We advertise our personal service contract positions through that website.
Great, thank you both so much. I see a couple questions coming through the chat. And so first off, what general departments within USAID have the most immediate hiring need?
That's a good question. I would say probably almost every bureau and office in USAID has an immediate hiring need. We just got out of a federal hiring freeze where it pretty much decimated our federal workforce. We were prior to the hiring freeze, we were at 16, almost 1,700 employees. After the hiring freeze, we were at, I think, around 1,400 employees. So it drastically shrunk our workforce. And then add on to that, we're now a part of the National Security Council. So we play a key role in developing national security strategy, which adds on extra responsibilities to our agency. Being prepared for those national security discussions requires more personnel. So I would say, in short, we need a lot of people really quick. But we also, some of the key areas that I mentioned earlier, our humanitarian assistance effort, we could really use, we're hiring for a lot of positions there. Also, diversity, equity, inclusion. We have a lot of new DEIA advisors around the agency that we're hiring and looking to fill. Other roles include like democracy, human rights and governance, and climate as well is another key area that we're hiring for. So those bureaus and offices are all looking to fill positions in the near future.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I see another question has come through the chat. Are USAID jobs only open to people stateside or overseas? It looks like that came from a spouse stationed in Germany who's interested in learning if she's able to get a job, or he, from Germany with our agency.
I'll take that one. It depends on the hiring mechanism. There are positions overseas that are available. We have what we call foreign service limited appointments that are usually advertised. There's Washington, D.C. based opportunities, and then there's opportunities overseas. Also, our personal service contract positions are posted on our USAID career pages. They also advertise opportunities overseas. Germany is a difficult station. I think we only have one mission in Germany, and it's in Frankfurt, and it's a really small office. I don't know that there's any positions being advertised for that office right now, but it's always worth a look at our career pages.
Great, thanks, Corey. And Wagui, I see you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
One of the things that the ERG is working to advocate for is more flexibility when military spouses have to go overseas and want to continue to be employed. And one of the mechanisms that is available is the domestic employee teleworking overseas. And we know that the mechanism needs some perfecting, but we are hopeful that in the near future, this will be something that will be available to the military spouses as they say you're employed in the States, you have a job in the States, and you're told to PCS with your family, then we believe you should be able to keep that job when you go overseas, and the detail will be able to facilitate that. So stay tuned. I think some good news is coming our way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wagui. Another question in the chat from Emma about, for my spouse's job, we will be posted abroad at an embassy instead of a military base. Can you talk more about foreign service limited appointments? Would these be GS, general schedule jobs, that any EFM eligible family member can apply to? Perhaps that's for Corey or Christina.
I'll take that one. And it looks like that might be two separate questions. Just the first one first. The foreign service limited appointments, they're foreign service appointments, but they're time limited. They're usually limited to about, I think it starts out as a 5-year appointment with the ability to extend for a max of 9 years. They don't have any status for career foreign service appointments. They're time-limited appointments. They are for a specific purpose or project, offer you the ability to come in, work on a project or something for a short period of time, and then the appointments end. Sometimes it can lead to other opportunities as well that provide more long-term stability, as whether it's a career foreign service officer appointment or the opportunity to apply to a civil service appointment if you come back to Washington, D.C. That's the foreign service limited appointments. The question about the GS jobs, I believe that was directed at something that Wangoi said. I can't remember what she was talking about. I might need some more clarification on that one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to read it out again if that's helpful, or we can perhaps circle back to it. Would these be general scheduled jobs that any eligible family member can apply to?
All of our general scheduled jobs are eligible for EFMs and military spouses. We post them on USA Jobs. You're welcome to apply. If you're an EFM or a military spouse, we just need your resume and either your documentation to show that you are eligible as you're an eligible family member or a military spouse traveling with your family. And as long as we can verify that information, you're eligible to apply to these positions and be selected non-competitively to fill the position. I hope that's helpful.
Great, thank you. And if you're just joining us, we're now in the Q&A portion of our event. So please feel free to add any questions you might have for our panelists in the chat or raise a hand and we'd be happy to respond. In the meantime, perhaps I could just ask a question I know that came up in the last session. And I think, Christina, you were able to provide a great response related to, if possible, to give some examples of the experience and education of a variety of your employees. I know that was a question raised during our last session.
Sure. Okay. As far as the education, if it's announced at the grade GS 12 and above, there is no educational substitute for specialized experience, and we would be looking for specialized experience in order to qualify the applicant. But if it is a lower graded announcement, say for example at the GS 9, then there are opportunities to substitute your education in lieu of specialized experience. And then some experience that we are seeing as far as when we're looking at applicants and their resumes, a lot of what we're seeing is administrative management skills. We see a lot of analysts, policy, research, IT experience, qualitative and quantitative analysis experience, experience in democracy, governance, let's see, health issues. And I'm not sure if I mentioned conflict already, but we also see a lot of contracting officer experience and process owners and project management. So a variety of things.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christina. I see another comment in the chat. It looks like from iPhone, so I'm not sure who entered this, but if you wouldn't mind clarifying, it looks like it was a question about opportunities for RN and MSN. If you don't mind just adding in, apologies, I'm not familiar with those acronyms. I don't know if our panelists are.
I looked it up. I think it's registered nurse and Masters of Science in Nursing. So yes, if I'm correct, then there are opportunities at USAID that with that educational background that you might be a good fit for. We do, in our Bureau for Global Health, we do have a lot of opportunities for public health advisors and health science specialists that work on global health programs overseas. Like, we have an Office of HIV and AIDS that works on developing programs in developing countries to help combat the spread of the HIV virus. So there's tons of opportunities available. We also have maternal and maternal health programs that offer opportunities for RNs and MSNs. It's just, you can find them on USA Jobs, and you just want to make sure that you line up your resume with this experience being advertised. If it's a position with maternal health, you just want to make sure that your resume kind of aligns with what the position does or what the advertisement says the position does on a daily basis. And that'll help you get considered for those types of opportunities.
Great, thank you, Corey. And I don't see any other questions in the chat. So again, please feel free to drop some in. Oh, here we go. It looks like we just received one. For those military spouses who join USAID as an officer, how common is it to be posted with an active duty spouse abroad?
Wangoi, I'll chime in, and you probably provide some additional information to help me out. But it's becoming more common lately since the COVID pandemic, as the agency has moved to almost a virtual environment. At this point, most of our workforce is still working from home. We're starting to transition back into the office, but the opportunities to work overseas and follow your spouse, whether it's a foreign affairs officer or military spouse, the opportunities are becoming more available as we move to more of a virtual work environment. So I would at least stay posted, and you'll see on USA Jobs that we're advertising more remote positions, and there's likely to be more coming available in the future.
Yeah, that is what we are advocating for. We want to be able to stay in a career and to go along and support our military partners. It is something that we are hopeful will happen because it's good for the families and it's also good for the country. We are highly motivated, we are highly resilient, and we are quite skilled military spouses. And so that is something that the ERG is supporting, that when our spouses have to PCS, that those where we are employed can let us go and telework from abroad using the detailed flexibilities and whatever other mechanisms. Because what we have learned from the pandemic is that we're capable. Nothing, we're actually very productive during the pandemic. And so that is what we are advocating for. Thank you for the question.
Thanks so much, Magui and Corey. Looks like we have time maybe for one or two more questions. So if you have another question for us, please feel free to drop it in the chat or raise a hand. And in the meantime, perhaps I could just ask, I know one question that was raised previously was about the length of resumes and federal resumes, if there's an ideal length to shoot for, or even addressing any gaps that applicants might have on their resume.
Sure, I'll take this one. So as far as the length of your resume is concerned, there is no ideal length. We encourage you to be as detailed as possible when you are drafting your federal resume. We encourage you to write it in task statements, or just basically every single detail that you could think of that requires you to do your job that you've done in the past, include it. in your resume. It's all of it is vitally important in determining your qualifications. And then as far as the gap is concerned, you can, whatever you were doing during the gap, you can place that on your resume and the transferable skills. For example, if you were in college, you can take the skills that you were learning from your classes and you can write that into your resume for that gap. There's nothing wrong with explaining that in your resume.
Great, thank you, Christina. It looks like we have time for one more question, which was, are there remote or home-based roles with USAID?
Sure, I will take that one as well. And yes, we have several remote positions. As our positions are being advertised, we are making it clear on the announcements whether or not it's a remote eligible position. If you do happen to get hired into a position that was not offered as remote, there also may be opportunities for you to work out a telework arrangement with your immediate supervisor.
Great, thank you so much, Christina. I think that about brings us to time for this session. So just to let everyone know, we've shared a roadmap to join other Zoom rooms if you'd like. And thank you all for joining today. We'll share out this presentation with any follow-up information so you can follow up accordingly.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2:30 and we're almost ready for our third session here today. We'll give folks about 2 more minutes to trickle into the presentation room here. Okay, good afternoon, folks. Let's go ahead and get started. So first off, we want to thank you for participating in the Federal Interagency Military Spouses Career Expo. This third session is being hosted by the U.S. Agency for International Development. For this session, we ask that you use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to submit questions, comments, or remarks throughout the presentation and the Q&A session. This presentation is being recorded, and links to recordings of all presentations will be emailed to attendees in the days following this event. A PDF of the presentation slides that you'll see today will be dropped in the chat box during the Q&A session, so please download those. There are a lot of good links that our presenters will be using. At the end of the session, you will have one final opportunity to see another agency presentation at 3:15 before our day is done here. So with that, I'm happy to welcome Corey Contreras of the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Thank you very much, Kaylin, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our presentation on the U.S. Agency for International Development. Greatly appreciate your interest in a career with USAID, and we want to explain what our agency does a little bit more, and as well as different opportunities and where to find opportunities for USAID. This is our third of 4 presentations. This is going to be probably as good as it gets. I've practiced 2 times now, so I'm getting better on this presentation. So we have one more presentation at 3:15, and hopefully I get a little bit better at that point as well. This presentation is broken down into 2 sessions. We have one 20-minute presentation that'll take you through who and what USAID is, the work that we do, the types of positions that we hire for, and also how to find those opportunities. We're also going to take you through and introduce you to our military spouse ERG and kind of the work that they're doing on their end. So we did save about 25 minutes of this presentation to open it up to questions that you might have for us. Feel free at any time to drop questions in that chat at the bottom. We have our colleague Hillary Collins, who is noting all of your questions, so that way as we get to that Q&A session, she can ask the questions and our panel can answer them for you, and try to help you as much as possible gain a career with USAID. So I want to introduce you to the panel. First off, my name is Corey Contreras. I'm the Division Chief for the Civil Service Staffing Division at USAID. also have my colleague, Christina Pacunas, who is an HR advisor with the Office of Human Capital and Talent Management. And also we have joining us Wangoi Kiundi, who is the president of the Military Spouses ERG at USAID. And she'll be walking us through, introducing us to the ERG, the good work that they're doing to advance military spouse careers at USAID, and see how we can open more opportunities for military spouses at USAID. First, we're going to introduce you to USAID and our mission. On behalf of the United States, USAID leads international development and humanitarian efforts to save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people progress beyond assistance. Our work directly advances U.S. foreign policy objectives as well. The mission of our organization is what motivates our employees to come into work on a daily basis. Other than the fact that they get paid, they really enjoy the work that USAID does and seeing the good that we're able to do in developing countries around the world. It helps our employees and motivates our employees to carry out the work that they do in administrative roles, or even people that are involved in the different projects and programs that USAID offers, manages overseas to help developing countries. Now we're going to go into some of the projects and programs that USAID operates overseas, and I'll give you a little bit of a background about the work we do overseas. So as part of the Administrator Samantha Power's mission for the Global Development Partnership Initiative, which is her vision in advancing international development and the work of USAID. She defined 5 key pillars of development, one of them being humanitarian assistance. As the world continues to have natural disasters around the world, we need a workforce at USAID that can meet those demands and help countries that are going through natural disasters be able to rebound from those natural disasters quicker, repair their cities, and get them back on their feet. Another key pillar is democracy, human rights, and governance. Over the last few years, we have seen a rise in autocratic leaders that have pushed the boundaries of democracy. The administrator wants to continue to advance democracy and advance human rights as well. So she's pushing for more programs and projects in countries to advance democracy overseas. Over the last couple of years, we've all gone through the COVID pandemic pretty much together, and that's impacted our lives on different levels. To be able to meet the demands of future pandemics and be prepared before they happen, she's also proposing to enhance the global development capabilities of USAID and make sure that we're prepared for future pandemics. And then connected to the natural disasters, there's also a push for climate, working on programs and projects that help counter the natural disasters that are happening around the world and preventing more future disasters in the coming years. The 5th proponent of her GDPI program is to ensure that the agency looks like the American public. We want a diverse workforce to work with USAID, which includes the hiring of military spouses, veterans, persons with disabilities, so that way we can continue to advance and show what the US public looks like and the good work that we do. Connected with the the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility footprint within that pillar of the GDPI program. There's also a push to ensure that USAID is working with partner organizations in the countries that we serve. We want to be able to partner with people that are on the ground to ensure that the programs and projects that we implement around the world are going to benefit the people that we're trying to help. And there's no better way to do that than to partner and give a little bit more voice to the people that are in the developing countries to be able to tell us what they need to help improve their day-to-day lives in these developing countries that we operate. And then you'll see from this picture, there are other projects and programs that USAID operates around the world, which includes education, agriculture and food security, economic growth, and then also crisis, conflict, and instability. And we're regularly hiring for technical experts in these areas to assist in the advancement of our programs overseas. USAID is also a part of the National Security Council. We've recently been added to the National Security Council within the last couple of years, and we play a key role within the national security strategy, which leadership defines as the 3 Ds. The 3 Ds include diplomacy, which is led by the Department of State, with them managing America's relationships with foreign governments, international organizations, and the people of other countries. The management of all of these relationships is called diplomacy. Our role in the 3 Ds is the development range, which USAID works to advance U.S. national security and economic prosperity, demonstrating American generosity and promoting a path to recipient self-reliance and resilience, as we explained in the previous slide, with all the projects and programs that we operate overseas to help developing countries kind of get back on their feet and advance their own well-being. And then the last of the 3 Ds is defense, which is led by the Department of Defense, and the DoD's mission is to provide the military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security. All of this kind of puts together the president's agenda or national security strategy, and these 3 main Ds help to advance the president's strategy overseas to ensure national security. So the next slide, I'm going to bring in my colleague, Christina Pacunas. She's going to walk us through some commonly filled positions at USAID for our general schedule positions, give you a background on the types of positions we regularly fill, and then she'll also discuss how to submit applications for these positions and where to find them advertised. Christina, over to you.
Thank you, Corey. So as Corey mentioned, you'll see here a list of our most commonly filled general schedule positions. At the top of the list, you'll see positions with asterisks, and this is to identify positions that are of more of a technical, scientific, and professional nature. And what that means is that they will usually require a basic education or have an individual occupational requirement, which will specify very specific specialized experience needed as a basic requirement for the occupational series. So when you're applying to these jobs, just ensure that you are reading the job announcement thoroughly to make sure you upload any necessary supplemental documents to support your qualifications. And then the next list of jobs that we have, starting with the administrative officer down to the international cooperation specialist. These are our administrative and management positions. All of these positions listed are typically advertised at the GS-12 grade level and above. However, we often see our human resource specialist and administrative officer positions advertised starting at the grade level of GS9. For the higher graded positions, there is no educational substitute for specialized experience. So that would mean that 1 year of specialized experience at the next lower grade level would be required to qualify for that position. But when we have our lower level positions that start at the GS9, for example, that is where you have an opportunity to substitute your experience for education if you don't have it. And in order to access the jobs that we have available at USAID, all of our jobs are listed at USAID Jobs. We have our general schedule and foreign service positions listed on USAID Jobs, to be specific. The foreign service positions are in the accepted service, and these are positions where you can find assignments abroad, but we do have a lot of these positions domestically as well. And then we have a lot of our positions listed on the career pages for USAID. And this is a link, as well as the link in the previous bullet for USA Jobs. These are both links directly to access those positions. We also have personnel service contract positions listed on our USAID's career pages. These are contract opportunities where the personnel, they're employed by a company that has the employer and employee relationship between the government and the company's employees. These are not federal positions. And then we have our positions, well, we will have our positions listed within the Military Spouse Employment Partnership Program. This is one of our newer initiatives that we are getting ready to finalize, hopefully towards the end of this month. And this partnership allows military spouses to connect with federal agencies and private companies who are looking specifically to recruit for military spouses. So we encourage you to create an account with their site, because once you have access to their site, you have direct access to, I think it's over 600 partners with military spouse employment who are seeking to hire military spouses. Now I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Wango E, to talk about the ERG.
So the Military Spouses Employee Resource Group, ERG, was formed in July 2021. Our mission is that we believe, and we want everybody to support, the idea that a military spouse can have his or her own career while also supporting a family member who is part of the military services. And we can do that. We also want to promote recruitment and retention. We need both. We need to be hired, and we also need to be retained. That means removing any barriers to promotion, any barriers to advancement. We also want to be included as part of the diversity, inclusion, and equity initiatives. That means any policies that will provide flexibilities or any of that, anything that will help us advance and be part of a profession, a part of a professional group. We are in support of that. We also know that military spouses, although we are very educated and resilient, there is an underemployment that is very, very high at 22%. That is very, very high. We know that is not good for families and for the country. We want to be able to have a career and not to be separated from our loved ones, from those who are serving in the military. I think we can do both. And so when you are hired, we invite you to join us, join the ERG, and be part of the, I believe we're now at 120 or so members who span the spectrum of every military service, except for the Air Force, not the Air Force, the Space Force. And if you're part of the Space Force, we welcome you. Please join us. And so thank you for being here. And we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ongoy. Before we get to the questions, I just want to provide some contact information for everyone to use to reach out to. First, we have the Military Spouse ERG email. If you have any questions about USAID in general or the Military Spouse ERG, you can use this email to contact the Military Spouse ERG. USAID also has a Veterans Employment Program Manager that helps find veterans and military spouses employment with USAID. Also to answer any questions regarding recruitment and hiring for military spouses and veterans. And then down below, last but not least, we have Christina and I. If you have any questions about the federal hiring process for general schedule positions, the positions that Christina mentioned earlier, you can always feel free to reach out to either of us, and we'll try to answer your questions as best as we can via email. You can also look us up on LinkedIn and chat us on LinkedIn as well, and we'll try to answer your questions there as well. We're going to go into the Q&A session now. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat at the bottom. Our colleague Hillary Collins is going to be taking your questions from the chat and posing them to the panel members one at a time. So Hillary, over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Corey. So first, to start us off, we got a question in the chat about whether USAID has any remote positions. Perhaps Corey or Christina could respond to that.
Sure.
I'll take that.
Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
You wanna rock, paper, scissors? We do have remote positions available. We advertise them on our the USAID Jobs website. There are possibly more coming in the future as the agency starts to learn how the remote work environment works out for the agency. There could be an expansion of remote opportunities. So you can always check that USAID Jobs website to see the different opportunities available at USAID. And it doesn't hurt to reach out to the Military Spouse ERG or the Veterans Employment Program Manager to discuss those opportunities with them as well.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. And perhaps Christina, you might be able to respond to this next one, which was about, does volunteer experience qualify for the 1 year at the lower grade level, depending on the specific volunteer work?
Yes, I can take that one. So to answer the question, yes, it certainly does. We encourage any and all experience to be represented and demonstrated in your resume. Don't leave anything out when you are explaining that experience. And one thing I can recommend to help you determine if it's at the next lower grade level is to look up the occupational series on opm.gov. And if you navigate to the classification area and find that series, you'll be able to determine if your experience is coming close to the next lower grade level that's required for that position.
Great, thank you, Christina. So our next question perhaps is best for Wagui, if you don't mind responding to, is the ERG only for spouses of active duty or for veteran spouses as well?
All are welcome. It's veterans, it's military spouses, it's our allies. All really are welcome. Because these issues affect military families, and if you were in whatever in your service, reservists or active or National Guard, wherever you are, we want you to have a network where you feel you're supported and you're somebody is hearing you, and we can work together to solve problems and address challenges. Thank you for the question.
Great, thank you so much for your response. So we have another question, perhaps for Christina. Could we send you our resume to have you look at it and see if we would be a good fit for USAID?
Yes, it's not a problem at all. We would definitely be happy to assist you in providing feedback on your resume. Absolutely.
Great. And just a reminder for everyone, especially even if you're just joining, we're now in the question and answer portion of our session. So please do continue to put any questions you might have in the chat, or feel free to raise a hand and we can respond accordingly. So I don't see any new questions that have come in, but perhaps could just mention one from a previous session was about whether US citizenship is required for our positions and if we have any openings for green card holders.
I can take that one. So there are different hiring mechanisms that do allow for hiring of people with either green card holders or non-US citizens. Those tend to be more of our contract mechanisms where it's either an institutional support contractor where you work for a private sector organization that has an agreement with USAID to provide them staffing services for their to help carry out USAID's mission, or our personal service contracts, which are technically employees of USAID, but they're not federal appointments. They're just contracts, and usually the contract is for 4 to 5 years to carry out projects for USAID in a short period of time. Those are the main opportunities for either green card holders or non-US citizens. There are seldom opportunities with GS positions because most of our federal opportunities require US citizenship based on the funding that we provide or we are provided by Congress to staff up our agency. But there are opportunities out there. The contract mechanisms, you can either check out the sam.gov website or our USAID career pages to locate some of those opportunities on the internet.
Okay, thank you, Corey. And again, feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat. I can go ahead and share a couple from previous sessions that we heard in the meantime. Perhaps one was related to whether USAID jobs are open only to people stateside or within the US or also overseas.
Okay, I can take that one. So we do have overseas opportunities, but those are primarily on the foreign service side of things. But yes, we do have both.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christina, for weighing in. Another question that I know was raised previously, and perhaps Corey, if you want to respond to this, was about what general departments within USAID have the most immediate hiring needs.
The most immediate hiring needs would be the ones, as I said previously, under the GDPI program, you have the global health, so the Bureau for Global Health, Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, the Bureau for Conflict Prevention and Stabilization, and we also have climate-focused positions as well as DEIA advisor positions for every bureau as they provide technical expertise within the climate and DEIA realm to help our agency out. Those would be the most pressing need, but there are all sorts of opportunities available at USAID right now. We're kind of recovering. We're in the recovery phase of coming back from a hiring freeze from a couple of years ago, where our workforce has kind of been decimated. So we're trying to grow our workforce out to 2,200 GS employees, which will be kind of handled within the next 2 to 3 years. So there's plenty more opportunities to come. So keep an eye out on USA jobs.
Okay, thanks so much, Corey. I see we have a hand raised. I think it's Jenny Dobbs. If you want to, I can unmute you to ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm kind of feeling a bit more positive after looking at the last slides talking about military spouses, because I'm in the process. I'm a new military spouse, and we're just in the process of having my paperwork and all that stuff. However, in terms of, so I just finished my PhD in Japan, and we're now in the US. And as probably you all know, like there's limited things that I can do right now, given my current situation. However, knowing what you know about those jobs that you guys have, what are skills that I could kind of invest in while I wait, for formal paperwork to go through and all that stuff that might, be very much useful for me, or I guess hopefully for others too. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny. So if I heard you correctly, I think your question was related to perhaps specifically the kind of skills we look for in applicants. I don't know if Christina, you want to take that one?
Sure, I can take that one. So a lot of the skill set we see for our positions revolves around analysis, policy writing, document writing in general, oral speaking, let's see, project management, healthcare issues. That's more specialized though. Let's see. A lot of it's administrative management analysis, qualitative and quantitative. And trying to think of some others that I see a lot.
There's also
Contracting
some project
officers.
management.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to both. At least, like, yeah, I just don't want to wait and not do anything. You know what I mean? Like, I might as well try to kind of upskill or do some other volunteer training work that I can do for free or whatever, instead of just like literally waiting and just be at home. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for your question. And Wagui, I see you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Jenny, can I just applaud you, first of all, for your resilience? You have a PhD, lady. Good job. We are so proud of you. And you have so many skills that I would suggest that you reach out and create an account at the Military Spouses Professional MSUP, mess up the name, program, because you can actually talk to a counselor who can walk you through resumes, and they have over 600 employers, both federal and private. And so I think that would be a good exercise for you to go through, because you sound very, very skilled, and I want to be encouraging to you. Reach out to that network and talk to a counselor. Go through your skills, and we know good news is coming your way, Jenny. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. We'll do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wagui. I appreciate your enthusiasm and encouragement. Are there any other questions? Please feel free to raise a hand or drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to respond. And in the meantime, perhaps I could also raise one that was pitched earlier about the ideal length of resumes for applicants, and or if an applicant has any gaps on their resume, how best to address that.
Sure, I can take that one. So as far as the length of your resume, there is no ideal length, required length, or minimum or max length of your resume. We just encourage you to include everything that you can think of from all of your related work experiences and include that in your resume. Don't leave anything out. Think of it as you writing out your day-to-day tasks, and just jot those things down and then work from there. When it comes to addressing your gaps in employment, you can actually position those on your resume as if it's experience as far as how you format it. and just make sure you convey all of the transferable skills that you can with the things that you were doing during that time of gap in employment. So if you were volunteering, or if you were in school, or if you were being a stay-at-home spouse, whatever the case may be, all of those things do include transferable skills. So just think about your day-to-day tasks just as if it was a position of employment, and write it out the same way.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Christina. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop these in the chat or raise a hand. And in the meantime, I'm just seeing if there are any other questions raised earlier that may be helpful for the group to hear. Perhaps I know there was a question related to whether these jobs we reviewed are just for civil service, and what about PSCs? I don't know if Christina, you don't mind responding to that one?
Right. So our positions expand to civil service, PSCs, ISCs, which are also contract positions similar to PSCs, as well as the Foreign Service. And all of our positions are found on our USAID career pages, which will be on a link in one of the slides in the slide deck that will be provided to you. So USAID jobs, you won't find the PSCs or ISC opportunities, but they will be found in our USAID career pages.
Awesome, thank you. I see we received another question in the chat from Isa, who is a bilingual speech language pathologist with a master's degree and has experience in administrative officer roles, and was curious if there's a position for him or her at USAID.
I can take that.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
So yes, there are plenty of opportunities. The administrative officer is one of the most commonly filled positions at USAID. So there's definitely some of those opportunities available right now, and coming available soon. So keep your eyes out on the USAID Jobs website, as well as, I mean, we also do a lot of education programs where there might be a need for a speech language pathologist to assist in developing programs overseas. So I would kind of look out for those opportunities as well. If you're interested, we also have positions, Foreign Service Limited and Personal Service Contract PSC positions advertised on our USAID career pages that might fit into what you're looking for as well. So that's another opportunity to find work with USAID.
Okay, great. Thank you, Corey. Are there any other questions from anyone else? I think we have about 1 or 2 more minutes, so we could take a final question or two if so. I know one question that was also raised earlier, which we touched on a little bit, but might be helpful for folks to hear, was related to if the panelists could give examples of experience and education that are common among our employees at USAID.
That's a good question. The experience and education kind of varies, depends on what type of occupation you're applying to. Most of our positions require some type of specialized experience. So if you're applying for a position within the budget analyst occupation, your resume has to document budget-related experience, whether it's kind of related to accounting or execution, formulation of a federal budget. Some of that experience has to come through on your resume, so that the various types of occupations that we fill, the experience around the agency will vary. Type of education, we do see a lot of people with education, whether it's related to international relationships, foreign affairs, but it also depends on the type of occupation you're going for as well. Within the Bureau for Global Health, we'll see a lot of bachelor's and master's degree for either public health administration, registered nurse, MSN, Master's of Science in Nursing, things like that that are related to health. So it depends on what type of occupation you're looking for and how it matches up with a different type of occupation that you're trying to go for. I myself have a master's in public administration and started my federal career as a student intern at Department of Energy at the GS5 grade level while I worked on my master's degree. So it just fit that I would go into human resources based on my education, and it did end up working out in the long run for me. And I really appreciated my federal career up to this point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Corey. And a big thank you to all of our panelists today. And thank you to everyone for joining us. I think we're just about at time. So just wanted to let everyone know I've shared a link, a PDF to the roadmap, which includes links to join the other Zoom sessions. So feel free to jump on to the fourth and final session, and we'll be following up with these materials. So thank you all for joining today.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll give folks about 2 more minutes to trickle into our final presentation here. We'll get started very shortly. All right, we're at 3:17 Eastern Time, so we can kick off our final session of the day here. First of all, big thank you for participating in the Federal Interagency Military Spouses Career Expo. I know it's been a long day and I hope it's been very informational for everybody joining. This final session is being hosted by the U.S. Agency for International Development. And for this session, we ask that you use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to submit questions, comments, or remarks throughout the presentation and Q&A session. This presentation is being recorded, and links to recordings of all presentations today will be emailed to attendees following this event. A PDF of the presentation slides that you're about to see will be dropped in the chat box during the Q&A session. We highly recommend you download these slides as they contain helpful links that we'll talk about today. With that, I'm happy to welcome Corey Contreras of the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin, and welcome everybody. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity to participate in this final presentation for the day. The panel and I have agreed that we're going to save the best presentation for last, so you guys are in luck because you're here. So this presentation, it's broken down into one 20-minute presentation, and then we wanted to save at least 25 minutes at the end in the event that you, our participants, have any questions that we can answer for you and help you learn more about the agency, the opportunities that we provide for careers with USAID, and how to locate those opportunities. So feel free, anytime during this presentation, if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. Our colleague, Hillary Collins, is keeping an eye on the chat to keep track down any questions that might come in and be able to save them for our Q&A session at the end of this presentation. We'll get started by introducing you to the panel. We have 3 panel members, including myself, Corey Contreras, the Division Chief for the Civil Service Staffing Division within the Office of Human Capital and Talent Management at the U.S. Agency for International Development. I have my colleague with me, Christina Pacunas, who is a Human Resources Advisor within the Civil Service Staffing Division. And we also have the President of the Military Spouse ERG at USAID, Wangoi Kyundi, also joining us to introduce you to the Military Spouse ERG tell you about some of the initiatives that they're working on to advance the hiring of military spouses at USAID, and also to enhance the retention of military spouses at USAID. As I said, if you have any questions during this presentation, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. We do have about a 25-minute Q&A saved at the end, so we welcome the questions and try to help you the best we can land a position at USAID. So we're going to start off with telling you a little bit about the mission of USAID and the work we do overseas. On behalf of the United States, USAID leads international development and humanitarian efforts to save lives, reduce poverty, strengthen democratic governance, and help people progress beyond assistance. Our work directly advances U.S. foreign policy objectives, and it's also a large part of what drives and motivates our employees to work for USAID. Our mission, our employees connect with our mission on a daily basis. They see the good work that this agency does overseas and get a little bit of satisfaction and motivation to continue the work that they do on a daily basis, whether it's working on projects and programs overseas, which we'll discuss on the next slide, or working to develop those individuals that work on those projects and programs overseas to make sure that they're taken care of, in making sure their human resources, their personnel information is up to date, correct. They receive a paycheck. They have the IT technology that they need to carry out their day-to-day jobs, communicate with people back in Washington, D.C., and also that they have the funding necessary to develop these programs and projects overseas to help people in developing countries. So let's talk a little bit about the projects and programs that we work on overseas. Administrator Samantha Power, she has laid out what we call the Global Development Partnership Initiative, which has really 5 key aspects of or pillars of the GDPI that kind of describe what her vision for USAID is in the future. That vision includes ensuring that our workforce is well prepared for natural disasters in the future. We've seen multiple natural disasters happen in recent past, whether it's earthquake in Haiti, the Philippines. We've also worked on hurricanes, disasters, and being able to provide a humanitarian assistance effort that helps countries to rebuild their cities that just went through these natural disasters, making sure people are out of harm's way, to be able to rebuild and get people back on their feet. Another pillar is the democracy, human rights, and governance. There's been a rise in autocrats around the globe that have pushed democracy to its limits. And democracy's somewhat taken a back seat to these autocrats. We want to be able to advance democracy to make sure that people have human rights that are taken care of. They have a voice in their political system within whatever country that they were raised and live in now. Another pillar would be global health. With the recent COVID pandemic, we've learned a lot from some mistakes that we've experienced as we were all trying to deal with this pandemic on a day-to-day basis. We want to make sure that our agency and our workforce is prepared to take on these pandemics head on, so that way we're able to learn from our mistakes and help people overseas. And then another pillar is the environment and climate. to prevent some of these natural disasters that are taking place around the globe. We want to be able to advance environment and climate-friendly technology to prevent some of these humanitarian assistance or natural disasters from happening to begin with. It's a huge project, and hopefully we can help developing countries kind of build and advance with climate and other projects. The last pillar is the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. The first part of that, we want to build a workforce that represents the American people, with people that look like the American public, having people with disabilities, military spouses, veterans of all race, national origin, ethnic groups involved in the work that we do at USAID. And the second part of that pillar is also the programs and projects that we operate overseas. We partner with people within the country to help understand or get a better understanding of what they feel that they need to help them become more resilient, whether it's environmental projects or programs, democracy and human rights programs, global health programs. We want to hear what people on the ground have to say about the projects and programs that we operate in developing countries, so that people in those developing countries have a voice in the projects that USAID carries out. Other projects and programs that USAID operates in foreign countries include education, agriculture and food security, economic growth and trade, and then also crisis, conflict, and instability. All of these programs help to improve people's lives overseas, which is a huge part of our mission at USAID, and helps drive our employees to continue to come to work on a daily basis. Now we're going to switch over to how USAID plays a role in national security strategy within the federal government. The national security, USAID recently became part of the National Security Council, which plays a huge part in developing the national security strategy for the federal government, which is kind of passed down from the President of the United States, tweaked by the National Security Council, and then all supporting organizations throughout the federal government play a role in carrying out the national security strategy of the United States. The USAID plays a role in what we call the 3 Ds, which includes diplomacy, development, and defense. Diplomacy, which is led by the Department of State, they manage America's relationships with foreign governments, international organizations, and the people of other countries. The management of all of these relationships is what we call diplomacy. USAID plays a role within the development role, where we work to advance U.S. national security and economic prosperity. We demonstrate American generosity through the projects and programs we operate overseas, and then we promote a path to recipient self-reliance and resilience. We want to help people in developing countries so that they can take care of themselves eventually and continue to grow and develop their people. And then the third D of the 3 Ds includes defense, which is headed up by Department of Defense, whose mission is to provide the military forces needed to deter war and ensure our nation's security. This is the USAID's role in the national security strategy and the projects and programs that we operate overseas. We're now going to turn over to talk more about the different types of general schedule positions that we commonly fill at USAID, and that you can find on USA Jobs as well as our USAID career pages. To go over the positions, I'm going to turn it over to Christina Pacunas to lead us in the discussion. So over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Corey. So as Corey mentioned, we're going to cover the most commonly filled general schedule positions that we have in USAID. So right now, these are the positions that we are seeing that need to be filled most often. We have some positions designated at the top of this list with an asterisk, and that is to let you know that these positions are more of the technical and professional and scientific positions. And so what that means to you is that when you're applying to these positions, they will usually require something extra like an educational requirement or an individual occupational requirement that will specify the type of specialized experience that you need to have for these positions, or even a certification. So when you're applying to these professional and scientific positions, or these more technical positions, just ensure that you are reading the job announcements thoroughly to make sure you don't miss any required document, such as a transcript or a certification. Next, we have positions listed that are in our administrative and management series. That begins where the administrative officer is listed down to the international cooperation specialist. These, all of these positions listed here are typically recruited at the GS-12 level and above. And at the GS-12 level and above, there is no educational substitute for specialized experience. So that means that we are looking for 1 year of specialized experience at the next lower grade level in order to qualify for the position. And sometimes, though, we often see lower grades advertised in our administrative officer series and our human resource specialist series. And you can see positions advertised starting at the GS-9 level with a target to 13 and sometimes higher. And on this page, we do have links to where you can access our job announcements. In the first bullet, we'll talk about USAID jobs. This is where you will find all of our general schedule and foreign service positions listed. The foreign service positions, these are positions that are in the accepted service. And with a foreign service position, you can expect to be assigned to a mission abroad. However, we do have a lot of these assignments domestically as well. And then we do have other mechanisms called the personal service contract positions. So in addition to our general schedule and foreign service positions, you can also find these PSC positions listed on our USAID's career pages. This is a direct link to our career pages. The PSC positions, these are contract positions. It's basically an employee-employer relationship between the government and the company's employees. The PSC positions are not federal positions. And then we also want to highlight the Military Spouse Employment Partnership. So USAID is excited to be partnering with this program. This will be new for USAID. We are actually finalizing our agreement to begin partnership with this program at the end of this month. And the Military Spouse Employment Partnership, it's basically a website where military spouses can connect directly with agencies and private companies who are looking to recruit specifically for military spouses. The website provides an avenue to access to more than 600 agencies and private companies. So that is a valuable resource for military spouses, and we really encourage you to create an account on that website to ensure that you have access to all of our positions wherever they're posted. Now I will turn it over to my colleague, Wangui, who will talk about the military spouse ERG.
The Military Spouses Employee Resource Group was created in July 2021. We believe that a military spouse can have a career, and a very good career, and still support his or her family member who is a military service member. We believe that you can not only recruit, but you can also retain. That means you remove barriers to advancement and promotion. You create an environment where military spouses are part of any diversity, inclusion, and equity policies and initiatives. And we also want to make sure that we address the underemployment in military spouses. We know that we are a highly educated group. We have many master's degrees and even PhDs, and we are very resilient. And so it is unacceptable that we should have a 22% unemployment rate. We believe it's not good for the families, and it's not good for the federal government. It's not good for the nation. We also want to do all of this while being together with our family members. And so these are our priorities. We ask you to join us once you are employed. And now Corey is going to tell us how you can stay in touch.
Thank you, Ongoy. Before we get to the question and answer session, and I think Hillary has some questions for us, we want to provide you some contact information for people at USAID. The first one being the Military Spouses ERG. If you have any general questions about USAID, questions about what it's like to be employed at USAID, things like that, you can feel free to reach out to the email provided here for the Military Spouses ERG. USAID also has a Veteran Employment Program Manager that helps assist veterans and military spouses with questions pertaining to jobs at USAID, recruiting for veterans and military spouses. That email is provided here. If you want to reach out to them about maybe getting help with your resume or different opportunities at USAID, you can email the Veteran Employment Program Manager at thevets@usaid.gov. Last but not least, we also provided my email address and Christina's email address in the event that you have any questions about the hiring process at USAID, whether it's applying to a vacancy announcement, how to make your resume more competitive, or in general, what the process looks like for applying to a position at USAID. We're happy to help you out in any way we can, and we're available to talk if you want to talk. You can also look us up on LinkedIn and send us a connection, and we're happy to talk to you on LinkedIn if you send us a request. So that's our contact information. I'm going to turn it over now to Hillary to walk us through a few questions that you might have before we close out this final session.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Corey, and thank you to all the panelists for this helpful presentation and all this rich information. So I see we've gotten a couple of questions in the chat and can just start off with one from Heather about what is an international cooperation specialist and also a democracy specialist. So perhaps best for either Corey or Christina to respond to that one.
I'll take that one. An international cooperation specialist, these positions we usually call our desk officers. They're the ones that communicate with our foreign service officers and others at our missions to be able to obtain updates on how the rollout of programs and projects overseas, to make sure that our leadership is up to date on how projects and programs are going overseas, if there's any problems, being able to relay that information to Congress so that way we can ensure we can get more funding in the future for the good work that this agency does for people overseas. They also work with our Bureau for Legislative and Public Affairs, and some of them in more of our technical bureaus. They also help develop programs from Washington, D.C. to be able to roll out in developing countries that we work in on a regular basis. The democracy specialist, that's more of a technical position. It focuses on democracy, human rights and governance projects and programs overseas, making sure that the projects and programs overseas that we roll out are, what's the word that I'm looking for? We're able to, that when we roll them out, they're gonna be able to make the impact that we think they're gonna impact. Also looking at doing research on the country to make sure that the project that we're rolling out in that country is valid and will help people in the country. So that's what those two different types of occupations do. If you're interested in any of those, we'd be happy to explain some more.
Awesome. Thank you, Corey. And again, feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat. We'd be happy to respond or raise a hand. So I'll keep an eye on that as we go. It looks like we just received one from Claire. Do you ever have positions advertised in the community planner or GIS, geographer, cartographer type series? Thank you. So perhaps Corey or Christina could respond to that one.
I'll take a stab at that one. I do see space planner positions advertised, and those are the positions where the incumbent is managing like the space of the building and making sure things are set up for new employees or reorganizations or construction work, different projects that have to take place physically, and they have to manage the space of it. I do see those types of things. I mean, and it includes acquiring all of the equipment necessary and engaging all necessary stakeholders. I haven't seen the GIS, geographer position though, which would, I know what you're referring to. I haven't seen that though, but I don't know if Corey has anything to add.
Yeah, we do hire for all of these positions. They're probably not titled community planner, GIS, geographer, cartographer, but those skill sets are definitely needed at USAID, especially GIS, since we're an organization that's spread across the globe, and being able to track all of the different projects and programs that we work overseas. So GIS has been a really big skill set that I've seen at USAID. In community planner, we're an international development organization, so there is a lot of the projects and programs that we carry out. There is an aspect of community planning involved. A lot of the positions that we advertise for these will probably be either titled like management and program analyst, or on the foreign service side, you'll probably see like program officer positions that will require that kind of knowledge for community planning, GIS, geographer, cartographer. That knowledge goes a long way in those types of positions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Corey and Christina. Again, please feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat, and we'd be happy to respond. And in the meantime, I'll just pitch one that we heard from an earlier session, which might be helpful for the folks on the call to hear now. For Waigui, is the ERG, or Employee Resource Group, which we just spoke about, only for spouses of active duty or for veteran spouses as well?
No, we welcome all family members, all military family members, whether you're active duty now or former, whether you're in the reserves, National Guard, whatever your branch of the military is, and our friends and allies. Everybody is welcome. Thank you for the question.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I know another question we received, which perhaps folks would like to hear a response to here as well, was whether USAID jobs are only open to people who are within the US or also overseas, and perhaps if we could also speak to remote positions. So perhaps Corey or Christina would like to tackle that one.
Sure, I'll go ahead. So we do have several remote designated positions, and if the position is designated as remote, it will be listed on the job announcement on USA Jobs. We do have overseas position opportunities, and those are typically found in the Forest Service positions. And was there another part of that question, Hillary, or did I answer that?
No, I think that covers it. Yeah, just remote and then overseas as well. That's great. And again, please feel free to add any questions you have in the chat or raise a hand, and I'd be happy to keep going through some questions raised earlier in the meantime. I know another one that came up was whether US citizenship is required and if USAID has any job openings for green card holders.
Sure, I can take that one. Most of the opportunities available to either green card holders or non-US citizens are going to be contract positions, either personal service contracts that work directly for USAID and are just on like a contract basis. And then our institutional support contractors, which work for a private sector organization that works to help provide staffing for USAID so that we can continue to carry out our missions overseas. Those are the main types of positions that we have for non-US citizens and green card holders. There are a few foreign service and civil service opportunities available as well, but it's largely based on the type of funding we receive for positions, because there are regulations that require, depending on the appropriations provided by Congress, require us to fill the positions with US citizens. But there are opportunities available, especially in the contract realm.
Okay, great. Thank you for weighing in. And does USAID conduct volunteer opportunities as well?
Yes. Actually, no, I take that back. So there are opportunities for unpaid internships. That's about as close as we get to actual volunteer opportunities. There is some sensitivity about the work we do overseas. So volunteer opportunities are fairly scarce because we do require a security clearance to work for USAID. It has to be at least a secret security clearance. So volunteer opportunities, it's hard to find for positions at USAID.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And I know in a previous session, we received a question about the ideal length of resumes for applicants. So perhaps Corey or Christina could respond to that. And then second part of that was related to whether an applicant has any gaps on their resume, how best to address that when applying.
I'll take that one. So as far as the length of the resume, there is no minimum or maximum required length. There's also no ideal length that we look for as human resource advisors or from the hiring manager's perspective. What we do encourage you to do is include everything that you can think of as it pertains to the job that you are applying to. So you can be as detailed as possible, and that will actually go a long way. As far as the skills gap or the gap in employment, excuse me, for that, we suggest that if you're going to include it in your resume, just include it as if it is another period of employment with a beginning and end date, and go through your day-to-day tasks that you were doing and accomplishing during that time and write them down just as if it was a period of employment. So that would include if you were in school, or if you were volunteering, or if you were staying at home, whatever you were doing that was advancing your skill set, and you have transferable skills, just write this down in your resume. And we find that works best for applicants. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Christina. Again, please feel free to add any questions you might have in the chat or raise a hand and we can respond. And I'd be happy to share a couple other questions we received earlier. One was related to fellowship opportunities. And I think an earlier participant asked about fellowship opportunities as a way to sort of get your foot in the door with the agency, and asking if there were any military spousal preferences for these opportunities, and just to learn more about fellowships in general.
I can take that one. So we do have fellowship opportunities in our foreign service and civil service hiring mechanisms. The foreign service side, what we call the PAIN fellowship, and it offers opportunities for people that just graduated or completed their like bachelor's or master's degree, offers them opportunities to join our foreign service cadre and gain experience overseas and working on projects and programs overseas for USAID. And they also tend to lead to permanent career foreign service positions, appointments. And we also have something similar on the civil service side, which we call the Presidential Management Fellowship. That is similar to the PAIN Fellowship. It offers people that have recently finished their master's degree within an institution of higher education, and allows them opportunities to come to work with USAID or other federal agencies and gain experience, and then also convert over to a permanent federal appointment. Neither opportunity really gives preference to veterans or military spouses. As soon as a person is found qualified for the position, at that point, all applicants are considered equal, and there's no preference provided. So hiring managers are able to select whoever they want from the list of applicants.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Again, please feel free to add any questions you might have to the chat, and I can continue sharing from previous sessions. We have about 5 more minutes or so for any questions, so feel free to add those. And in the meantime, perhaps Christina, if you'd like to respond to this one. I know we had heard earlier from an applicant asking if they could give examples of experience and education that are common among USAID employees.
Okay, well, the experience and education, well, for specific job announcements, it will depend on the job that's being announced. Generally speaking, the higher grades require education, lower grades, you can substitute your education. You can substitute the experience with your education. A lot of the skill set that we see within our applicant pool are individuals with analytical ability, project management experience, contract experience, written and oral communication, policy development, conflict resolution, administrative and management skills, program management, process improvement, and we see IT experience as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And
Really, we only have one participant left. Claire, why don't we can open up the line, and Claire, if you want to just talk, we can talk.
Thank you, Corey.
That way you don't have to have us talk at you. If you have any questions, we can ask you to unmute, and you can ask us any question that you want.
Oh, no, thank you. I have construction renovation going on behind me, so that's why I was doing on mute. But no, I've appreciated you going through the other questions. Certainly some things that I hadn't thought of. So no, it's good to hear. I've been kind of looking at the listings there for a little while, and so your information about the program analyst, I appreciate that very much. So I'm not searching for just one series. So thank you.
Awesome. And I mean, we have some more questions and we can read those off as well. If you want to hang out.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for flagging that, Corey. I didn't have the participants open.
Awesome. Well, great job, everyone. That was a long afternoon, but you were right. The presentations got better. They were right along the way.
Yeah, I think so too. Great job, everyone.